initial margin, maintenance margin. Friends, we had discussed a point like this, that whenever a trader is entering into the futures contract, then in that case the trader is entering into the futures contract with the faith that the exchange is there to give the profit to me if at all I have a profit. So basically the exchange is an intermediary between two parties, between two contracts. So whatever the transaction in which these two parties are entering into is through a medium, that is exchange. To make sure that, say, the trader who is incurring loss is making payment of loss, there is a concept called margin. Margin is, in a simple language, we understand a kind of security deposit which is given to give an assurance, in a simple language, that if at all there is a loss, then in that case I will pay the loss. If at all I do not pay the loss, then here is the some deposit amount that you can use for the purpose of recovering the loss from me. That is the concept that we have. See, as the word is there called initial margin. With that, say, very well you can understand, it means that, say, this is the margin amount which is required to be paid initially when the transaction is entered upon. This is the amount of the some security deposit which is required to be paid initially when the transaction is entered upon. That is given a technical name as the initial margin. So how the initial margin will work, how the maintenance margin will work, that is what, say, now I am going to discuss with you. To discuss the same, I am taking help of a question. You do not have to write anything. Let me explain you properly. Don't write anything. I am taking help of question number 3b to give explanation of the same. On 15th of November, when the spot price of the telco is rupees 473 per share, Mr. X purchases 15 contracts of December Telco futures at 491. Assume that the initial margin for the telco futures is 800 per contract and maintenance margin is rupees 600 per contract. Given that each contract is of 50 shares, daily settlement prices for the next few days are as follows: 496, 503, 488, 485 and 499. Assume Mr. X withdraws profit from his margin account only for once. On 16th of November, when he withdraws half the maximum amount allowed. Compute the balance in the account at the end of each of these 5 days. That is a question. Everybody please go through the question. Everybody is requested to pay attention, don't write anything. See, as far as the margin account is concerned, it will start something like this. Or it will have a simple statement like this. Column number 1 is date, particulars and the amount. That's it. When the transaction is entered upon, it is 15th of November. So I'm writing over here 15th. That is the date on which the transaction was entered upon initially. In that, we will show payment of margin. Payment of margin. Okay. What is the amount of the margin? Amount of the margin is 800 rupees per contract and 15 contracts are entered upon. So the amount of the margin which is paid is 12,000 initially when you initiate the contract. You can see that it has been provided to us that Mr. X purchases 15 contracts. So the important point is that you are entering into 15 number of contracts. What is the amount of the initial margin? Amount of the initial margin is rupees 800. So 800 rupees is the value per contract, that is the amount of the margin per contract into number of contracts 15, that is the way it is 12,000. Now importantly, you can see that the spot price is provided to us, rupees 473, which is of no use to us. What is relevant for us? Relevant for us is the futures price, which is provided as 491. Now we have to understand the information of the question like this, that on 15th of November, let us say that's a morning 11 o'clock, when the price of the December futures was 491, at that point of time the trader entered into the transaction for purchase, and when the market was closed on 15th itself, the futures price was 496. That is the way the information is given to us. Okay. Now at the end of the day, the price is 496. What stock exchange will do, friends? Stock exchange will prepare a kind of profit or loss on your behalf on daily basis. They will prepare this kind of a notional profit, that is profit or loss calculation. In that, so the column number 1 is again the date. Now the transaction in which you have entered upon, futures transaction, is to buy the security. What is the price? 491. So 491 will be the buy price. And assuming that at the closing price, as if you are going to square off the contract, they will compute the profit or loss. The closing price is 496. So assuming that is the price at which you are going to sell you are going to square off the contract, profit or loss will be calculated. So what would be the profit or loss? We understand that, say 496 minus 491. So that there is a profit of 5 rupees per share. Multiplying with the lot size. What is the lot size? Lot size is provided to us as 50 shares. So multiplying with 5050. So this is the profit or loss for one contract. Into what? 15 number of contracts. Why? Because 15 contracts have been entered upon. That is the way the profit or loss will be calculated. That is 496 minus 491. So 5 into 15. So 250 is the profit per contract into 15. Why? Because 15 contracts are entered upon. So there is an overall profit of 3750. This amount of the profit will be credited to your account on the same day. So on 15th itself, there will be a profit which will be credited to you, that is 3750. And on 15th, the closing balance will be 15750. This is the way that there will be an increase in the balance. Why? Because the futures price have changed in your favor. Okay. Now on 16th, what is the situation? Let us see. On 16th, the closing price. Make sure that I am speaking very clearly the closing price. Opening price, high price, low price, we are not concerned with that. We are concerned with the closing price, and the closing price is 503. So again, assuming that, say, as if the trader is going to square off the contract at the closing price, and amount of the profit or loss will be calculated. Understand it carefully what I am going to speak now. The closing price is 503. So 503 will become the sale price. Now, what happens that we understand logically that 491 was the price at which you had originally the futures contract to buy the security. Now the price is 503. So technically we understand that there is a profit of rupees 12. However, out of this 12 rupees of the profit of rupees 5 has already been credited to your account. 496 minus 491. So now only 7 rupees of the profit is yet to be credited. So now what will happen? This 496 will become the purchase price. This 496 will become the purchase price. Hence, the profit is required to be credited to the account is 503 minus 496. So you can see that there is a profit of rupees 7 to be credited into 15 into 15. That is the way the amount of the profit to be credited will be calculated. And this amount comes to 7 into 50 into 150. That comes to 5250. So on 16, again there is a profit. What is the amount of profit? 5250. Accordingly, so this statement will be prepared further. Now, on 16th, the closing balance is an amount of 21,000. That is 15750 plus 5250. That comes to 21,000. The question is providing the information, assuming Mr. X withdraws profit from his margin account only once. When does he withdraw? On 16th of November, when he withdraws half the maximum amount allowed. So at any point of the time, the trader will be allowed to withdraw the margin. To what extent he can withdraw? He can withdraw till the time the balance in the margin account is going down to the initial margin. So we understand that's over here like this. On 16th, there is a withdrawal. What is the withdrawal permitted? 21,000 minus 12,000. So the withdrawal of 9,000 is permitted. However, he withdraws only half the maximum amount allowed. So into 1 by 2. That comes to 4,500. That is the way on 16th we will find the closing balance. After withdrawal, the closing balance after withdrawal is 16,500. That is what we understand. Okay. Now on 17th, the closing price is 488. On 17th, the closing price is 488. So now what will happen again? This will become the purchase price 503 and 488 becomes the sale price. So we understand 488 minus 503. So there is a loss of 15 rupees per share. 488 minus 503. So loss of 15 into 15. That is the lot size into 15 number of contracts entered upon. That is 11,250. So what will happen? This loss will be deducted over here. 11,250. 16,500 minus this. That comes to 5250. Now listen to me carefully what I am going to speak. Whenever there is a loss, comma, deduct it from margin balance. Full stop. After that, this balance may be lower than maintenance margin. Now friends, whatever the closing balance that say you have after deducting the loss, that you have to compare with the maintenance margin. What is the maintenance margin? We can say that it is 600 rupees per contract. 15 is the number of contracts. So 600 into 15, that comes to 9,000 rupees, 9,000. So it is less than the maintenance margin. Okay, this balance is less than the maintenance margin. In this case, that is, if at all the balance is lower than the maintenance margin, trader is required to pay margin for such an amount so that balance increases to initial margin. Yes. So what happens at say over here, if at all the balance is lower than the maintenance margin, so there will be a margin call. So the closing balance before margin call. So on 17th, payment of margin, the margin will be paid for such an amount so that so the closing balance is equal to initial margin. And what is the amount of the initial margin? It is 12,000. So over here, the balance should be equal to 12,000. So what is the payment of the margin? It is 6750. That is the way we are required to make the computation of the payment of margin. That on heading initial margin, slash maintenance margin. In the write down first point, in order to reduce chances of default, comma, margin is collected from trader. For entering into futures contract. Full stop. In bracket write down, it may be to buy or sell underlying asset. Second point, soon after contract is entered upon, comma, payment is made of initial margin. Third, on daily basis, underline the word daily basis, comparison is made in between in between closing futures price, comma, to calculate profit or loss to trader in futures contract. Full stop. Underline the word closing futures price. Fourth point, profit is added in margin balance and loss is subtracted. Full stop. At any point of time, comma, if balance is more than initial margin, comma, trader is allowed to withdraw an amount up to initial margin. Fifth point, in case of loss, comma, if after deducting loss, balance goes down below initial margin, below maintenance margin, comma, then trader is supposed to pay margin call for such an amount so that balance increases to initial margin. Full stop.